lever-action firearms are directly linked to the history of the American West. And what we've got today is a representation of the evolution of American lever-action firearms. What we have on my right is a New Haven Arms Company volcanic lever-action carbine. This is one of the earlier lever-action designs. This particular one would have been one of about 1,000 manufactured in 1856 to 1860 by the New Haven Arms Company, but it follows multiple previous designs that go all the way back to the 1840s. With a volcanic, what you are firing basically is a caseless cartridge. You basically have a small 41 caliber bullet that is hollowed out from the back. That cavity is then filled with powder, and then a priming disc is on the back of that seals the powder in. So that limits the power of these firearms. A volcanic lever-action carbine is basically not a practical design for much other than possibly hunting small game. It's going to produce about as much muzzle energy as a 22 or a 25 ACP, so you can see it's a relatively weak design, and that's what kind of limited these designs. So volcanics were also manufactured as pistols. They were famously featured in the video games Red Dead Redemption 2. Given that I mentioned that these volcanic cartridges are basically as weak as a 22 or a 25 ACP, it's kind of funny that in those games, the volcanic is actually one of the strongest pistol designs. So that's obviously a kind of interesting anachronism they've built into the games. But the actual weakness of the real ammunition in real life is part of why the volcanic design was improved. And the improved design became the Henry lever action. The Henry lever action is basically an upscaled volcanic design for an upscaled cartridge. So what Benjamin Tyler Henry did was he redesigned a basically 22 rimfire cartridge to be 44 caliber. So if you look at this cartridge, you can basically see it is in design very similar to a 22 long, but it's a 44 caliber cartridge. It is rimfire just like, modern 22 ammunition. But it's much larger and much more powerful than the volcanic design. In fact, a 44 Henry cartridge out of a Henry lever-action rifle was basically producing 10 times the muzzle energy of a volcanic cartridge. So with a Henry, you actually have a design that is capable of being used by the military or by hunters hunting, small to medium game like deer. Like the volcanic design, the Henry actually loads from the front of the magazine tube, which is integral with the barrel. That design, while actually relatively practical, especially for hunting purposes, wasn't great for actual combat use, because if this magazine gets dented, which it could get dented relatively easily because it's not protected by a forend, then the whole gun's going to jam up. Nonetheless, the Henry actually did see pretty extensive use in the American Civil War, even though there was only around 14,000 of these rifles manufactured. Many of them were purchased privately by soldiers looking for the maximum amount of firepower they could get. Now, a Henry can hold 15 rounds in that magazine tube plus one in the chamber. So that's 16 rounds of ammunition that can be fired off very rapidly, while the Confederates would have been almost exclusively armed with single-shot muzzle-loading rifles. So a group of Union soldiers armed with Henrys had a lot of firepower by comparison. So after the Civil War, the firearms market was also very tight, so firearms companies needed really good products in order to compete in that market. So Oliver Winchester, who was an investor in the New Haven Arms Company that manufactured the previous two models, basically organized a hostile takeover after a conflict he had with Benjamin Tyler Henry to create the Winchester Repeating Firearms Company. Their first product was the Winchester Model 1866 Improved Henry. The designs are very similar at first glance. They're so similar, in fact, that in Hollywood, they often take a 66, remove this forend, and use it as a stand-in for a Henry lever-action rifle. If you've seen the movie Silverado, Danny Glover's character Maul actually uses a reproduction Henry and a reproduction 1866 with the forend removed to make it look like it's a Henry lever-action rifle. So the main improvements designed by Nelson King for the Winchester 1866 is a redesigned magazine tube that fits underneath the barrel but is not integrally part of the barrel, a forend underneath the barrel which both protects the magazine tube and also protects the shooter's hand as the barrel gets hot, and then the most important difference is the addition of a loading gate on the side of the gun. So instead of loading from the front of the magazine tube, you can load by just thumbing in cartridges here at the side of the frame. So this gate depresses and there's a follower in the magazine tube here that feeds the ammunition. The Winchester 1866 basically provided the blueprint for almost all of Winchester's lever action designs going forward. Almost all of them are going to have a loading gate, and a magazine tube underneath the barrel. There are some differences in the designs as John Moses Browning improved them with the 1886 and the 1892, but the basic design of a lever action rifle with a loading gate on the side, a 4N buttstock, and a magazine tube underneath the barrel remains stable throughout lever action production by Winchester thereafter. You can see several examples of the Henry lever action from the Civil War and the Winchester 1866 that followed in our online catalog right now for the upcoming February Sporting Collectors Firearm Auction, along with thousands of other historic firearms from the American West.